Well, welcome back to the Family Brand Podcast. I'm really stoked to be joined by an awesome guest here today, Justin Donald. Justin, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited to be here. We talked about this when we hung out in person here in Austin, and I'm glad that, we finally made it. So I get a chance to hang on your podcast for a bit. You get a chance to hang on mine. And I just think that there's so much cool stuff going on in the world, so many cool things you're doing. And I'm excited to learn what you're up to. And I've got some things that I feel like have worked well for us and for our family, and I'm excited to share them.
Yeah, likewise, man. No, it's amazing. Justin and I were just talking before we hit record. Who's been on his podcast recently? Michael Hyatt, who we'd had recently, and he's going out to see Michael, and I'm going out to see Michael, and then just other cool people. It's just cool. Like stuff's just happening out there in the world. And I think it's all, for me, it seems to continually revolve around successful, but also intentional entrepreneurs who are as committed to their families and their marriages as they are, the success of their business. So Justin has a really incredible business called The Lifestyle Investor. He wrote a Wall Street Journal bestseller called The Lifestyle Investor. Entrepreneur Magazine said that Justin is the investment world's new Warren Buffett, which is a pretty amazing accolade there, Justin. And so one of the coolest things I think about, Justin, your business, Lifestyle Investor, and what the benefit you could provide to our audience today is that The Lifestyle Investor as a business was actually born out of your own desire to be a more present husband to Jennifer and a more present father to your daughter, Savannah. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And gosh, I got to make sure that I set expectations and lower the bar here, because I don't want to be compared to Warren Buffett. What a kind tagline, but I got to tell you, that guy's in a league of his own. So don't have any expectations that I'm going to be in that league. I've learned a lot from him, and he's someone that I look up to and on many fronts. And actually, if you read any of his books, you'll learn that one of his biggest regrets actually is that he wasn't the family man that he thought that he could be or should be. So he built all this wealth. He's one of the wealthiest people, and people know him for that. But a lot of people don't know that it was at the sacrifice of family. And so I think the world of some of the cool things that he's been able to create, but I don't ever want anything that is going to commandeer or sit in a throne above, my faith and my family. So yeah, I think there's important lessons in that. And I think, I could go back and say, I'm part of this group called Front Row Dads, which my dear friend John Vroman started. And I've been there, really since the beginning, with just this focus, this intentionality on being in the front row for your family, like showing up. And I remember thinking how much of a family man I am. Like in my own head, I'm like, yeah, I'm a family man. I'm doing a good job. I'd show up for the family. And the whole thing is like, I had this goal of being a family man first and a businessman second. And that's even what I would say that I was. But if you looked at my schedule, if you looked at my calendar, which I think is the truest indicator of our priorities and how everything ranks, it was very clear that I was scheduling work first, and then wherever I could fit the family in, the family would go. That's not being a family man first and a businessman second. That's like being like everyone else, being a businessman first and then squeezing the family in, or at least the majority of people from my experience. And so that was a wake-up call to me, where I was like, man, I thought I was being intentional, and maybe I was being more intentional than others, but not as intentional as I could be. And my wife is really good to remind me of this. Anytime I feel like I'm, showing up or going the extra mile, she'll always be like, yeah, do you want to compare yourself to average dads, or do you want to compare yourself to the best dads that are out there? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yep. Good reminder. Do you want to compare yourself to average husbands? So you're doing so much better than average husbands, or do you want to compare yourself to those that are world-class in putting their spouse first? And so that has been some good perspective for me. And really, since I had my eyes opened to this whole concept of prioritizing my family. I have since started scheduling all the family time, the family trips, the, when work ends, when, weekends are blocked, evenings are blocked, like, days off of school are blocked, like everything. It's like, let's do family first. Not, for me in the mornings, I don't do anything until my daughter goes to school. So I get that quality time with her. Date day with my wife. We stopped doing date nights and we do date days because we feel like we have more energy and we can, do workouts together, bike, hike, whatever it is. And that those things are just scheduled and they're the priority. So yeah, that's been a big game changer. And having a brand like the Lifestyle Investor that puts it out there that I am focused on lifestyle first is the constant reminder that I need to show up and live the part of the brand. So it's great accountability for me.
Yeah, I love it. There's so many thoughts that come to mind as you're sharing. One of the things we say a lot at Family Brand is, how do you make sure that your family gets the best of you, not what's left of you? Because I think it's really easy as entrepreneurs. You don't even realize it's happening, but we're giving our best to our business and our partners and our strategic partners. And then what's left over, it's like, hey, here, family, feast off the scraps, right? Here's what's left over. It's all I have to give. And it takes some real intentionality to do it instead of having a business that runs your family, having a family that, runs your business. And you brought up that word intentional, and that's a kind of reoccurring theme of why we created Family Brand, and for those people listening, they've heard this before, but Family Brand was really born out of, the work I do with companies. And we had this wild idea to take our family through it, because we're like, well, why shouldn't we be more intentional, really? And like define what we stand for as a family and intentionally grow together, because growing together doesn't happen by accident. It's not going to be by default. It's going to be by design. So how do we intentionally grow together, live a bigger life of adventure and possibility as a family, and create relationships that are going to last?
Yeah. And I even think if you are not intentional about growing together, then the default is actually that you grow apart.
Yeah.
So it's not even, I actually think it's worse than what most people think. Right.
Yeah.
So like, if you're not intentional on the staying together, growing together, doing life together, then the default is that it's going to be worse. You're going to grow apart. You're going to not be as strong, which is way worse than just not growing together.
Yeah. And this idea of relationships that last, what's interesting is it's uncommon, at least for my wife and I, when we kind of look out in the world, you don't see a whole lot of families that when the children are grown, that they're still super close and connected. They'll do the obligatory, like Christmas, get together or Thanksgiving or once in a while. It's really rare though, for us to see adult children who are siblings who are still super close. They talk every day. They consider each other best friends. That's something that we want to create in our family. Again, this idea of creating relationships that last. Well, again, that's not going to happen by accident. That's not going to happen by design, like by default. You got to start designing that, today. And I think something interesting you said about Warren Buffett, and I love that you said that, is a lot of times we hold these men and women up in society, especially in the entrepreneurial world, of like just these incredible people who've created all this wealth. And then behind the scenes, you'll talk to them sometimes. They're like, yeah, but I blew it in some ways. Right. And even, I just got back from an 8-day trip to Japan with my 2 oldest sons. And it was just this amazing experience. And there's a little bit of me that was like, man, 8 days, not working at all in those 8 days. I had one call that I didn't want to reschedule. Other than that, I was present with them. And in the back of my mind, it's like, man, should I be working? Should I be contributing? Should I be doing more? Interestingly enough, we started this idea a couple months ago as a family. We have a family book club. And so one of our kids or one of us picks a book. We all read it on our Kindles, and then we meet the first Monday of every month and we talk about our insights from the book. And it's been really fun to do as a family. Well, the book we're reading right now, my son picked is Shoe Dog, the book by Phil Knight.
Great book.
Amazing book.
That book.
Yeah. Like I'm ready. I read it again the second time and I forgot how much I loved it. And it was cool being in Japan because if you know anything about the backstory,
that's where he got his first deal. That's right.
So we're in Japan, we're reading this book, and I can't help though, but notice throughout the book, multiple times he talks about, you kind of get this feeling without him coming out and saying it, like how guilty he felt though, that he was basically, his family was getting what was left of him, a lot of his career.
Yeah.
And then, that's one of his biggest regrets he talks about. It's interesting to kind of justify or balance that. Like, but I don't know that you can go build a multiple billion-dollar company and be the most, you know, I'm a big believer in, and it doesn't have to be either or, but it's, you know, it's a challenge. You see these people who have built these really massive like dynasties, billion-dollar brands, billion-dollar companies. Obviously there's a respectable level of tenacity and commitment. And so I just think it's this interesting conversation to be in, especially as entrepreneurs or people who have careers, of how do you have the and? How do you be intentional in your family and in your business? How do you grow a family and grow a business?
Yeah. Can it be done? I do believe it can be done. I think it's incredibly tough. I think it's incredibly tough to do it like in the first place, even if you sacrifice everything, period. But I think it can be done. But I think 9 times out of 10, it's a true trade-off.
Yep.
Because usually what you're going to need to do to get the edge and to like have the obsession, in order to get to that level, there has to be some sort of like crazy obsession
Totally.
that is being poured somewhere that's not your family.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think that this is where values come into play. What do you value? Like, what's the hierarchy of you personally?
Yep.
You know, what are your family values? What type of relationship do you want with your spouse? What type of relationship with your kids? So yeah. And by the way, I think culturally or societally, there is a warped value, a warped maybe conditioning in like having a lot of money or being really wealthy or having a monster business is the most important thing. So you're fighting against a really strong current out there,
Totally.
especially for people that, you know, are a little bit more of alpha, you know, type of personalities where ego is important, whether you recognize it or not. Yeah, that's tough. And
yeah.
And if that is what society values or what you think society values, then you're going to sacrifice other things thinking that that should be in the driver's seat, that's, you know, the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah. A religious leader once said that no amount of success will compensate for failure in the home. And so sometimes people ask me when I start talking about this, they're like, well, but you're in business and you have a business. Are you saying don't go grow a big business? Don't be obsessed. I'm like, no, by no means am I saying. I think it's back to your point of, but you have to really know what you value and what's important to you. And you just have to be really awake to the trade-offs because, you know, otherwise I think a lot of people get swept up in it. And then like one of my greatest fears has always been, and I think for most parents or most families, is that you're going to wake up 20, 30, 40 years from now, and it's just going to hit you one morning. You're going to wake up and it's going to be like, wow, I missed it. I had this one chance to like really show up and lead my family and be present and be connected and be committed and like live this life of adventure with my children. And I kind of missed it. Like I can't get it back. You know, and you hear those stories all the time.
Oh yeah.
And so I love this idea of the lifestyle investor, right? And so share with us some of the principles, Justin, that you've learned around how you can, in what you've created, have the and, right? You can have success in business, you can have success and be smart about your money, and have a lifestyle that allows you to be present with your family.
Yeah. And by the way, it gets back to that intentionality, right? Like I talk a lot about a life by design versus a life by default. Most people live a life by default, which, you know, is really disappointing if you think about it. And by the way, I know this because I used to live a life by default, and I just went from thing to thing, meeting to meeting, you know, whatever was on the schedule, whatever defaulted into my calendar, where I was reactive, not proactive. And so that was life for me. That was business life. That was all kinds of life. And man, did I do a horrible job of like creating time and space for, you know, my immediate family. Right. And even before I got married, like even with my parents, you know, so I can just think of like how I epically failed there. And I also recognize as a builder, a creator, I'm going to have this tug because for me, business is easier than other things. It's not always easy. I think many aspects have become easy over time with experience. And since I have more hours in business and investing than most anything else, that I'm better at that than the other thing. So it's easier to default to the thing that you're good at. And because you're good at it, you like it. So therefore, you're going to the path of least resistance. I'm not as much of an expert as a parent or as a spouse.
Yeah.
Right. And so like the draw is like, well, this will be easy. I'm just going to go spend this extra time over here. That's not necessarily what's best, but I have to fight and resist the temptation of making work an idol or success or whatever it is. And so the lifestyle investor for me is like a grounding where it's like, no, actually, I've built a brand that empowers us to create a lifestyle where we're including the people that we love the most, that we want to have relationship with the most. Like the goal here is I want to buy my time back. And I did. I bought my time back. I started buying assets that produce income so that I don't have to work for anyone, that money just shows up. And whether I'm working or not, there's an asset or many assets that are producing the amount of money that it takes for me to live the life that I live. Right.
Yeah.
And that to me is so important. And so the lifestyle investor brand is designed to help be an educational platform and a community where others can learn how to do it. Like I want to teach how I've done it. And I want others that have done it to be able to pour in and weigh in, the way that our mastermind, kind of does, and how, the members kind of feed each other and support each other. It's really a powerful thing, but that's the goal, to not have to work, but to get to work.
Yeah.
And when money is solved for, see, most people can't make the pivot until money's solved for. Some people can. It's a very small percentage that are willing to take the risk of just moving on, path unknown, income unknown. Often it's easier to do that earlier in life when you don't have dependents, right? So I think that for most people, when they solve the financial equation and it costs them X dollars to live and they have X dollars in passive income, the game changes. And you don't have to keep doing what you're doing. You actually get to choose. I get a lot of joy and I have a lot of passion when I do these. I feel fulfilled when I'm spending my time here and when I'm spending time with these people. And this is that life by design, right?
Yeah.
So I think it becomes so much easier to live this life that you are in love with when you solve for the financial equation, which isn't as hard and daunting as you might think.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much wisdom you packed in. So the first thing I wanted to touch on that you shared is, and I think this is really interesting to just think about if you have a career or you're an entrepreneur, and just accept and embrace that it probably comes more natural to you to be intentional in your business than it does in your family. Like, and not that there's nothing wrong with you. Like if you're hardwired to be an entrepreneur, like, of course it's going to come more natural to be intentional in your business than it is in your family. The danger in that though, is if you don't recognize it, you'll just default to the business all the time because that's what comes more natural. So it's going to take a little more extra work and intention to be intentional. Like you're going to have an intention to be intentional in your family because it doesn't come as natural. And, we always joke about this. There's probably a reason we gravitate to business too. It's like instant gratification. I see big results. I'm getting recognized. I'm getting, acknowledged. I'm not showing up at home and my kids are like, Dad, the way you go out and work and provide for us is just so inspiring. Like, thank you. Or Mom, the meals you cook us every night and the way our laundry folds and just shows up in our drawers. It's just like, you don't know if there's going to be a payoff over here, an ROI for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And if it is, what is it? And so it's like, I think that's just a useful thing to realize. I'm going to have to be more intentional because it doesn't come as natural. So then I can go to work on it. And I think that's just so, and sometimes people hear that like, well, is that wrong? It's like, no, it's just kind of what it is. Like that's how most of us are hardwired. The second thing you said I think is really interesting is I don't think oftentimes we think about designing a business that would allow us to have the life and the family we want. We just think about designing a business that would have success. And then whatever is left, then we kind of we make our family work as best we can around it. I really love this idea though. Well, if I know my family's my most important investment, if I know that I want to intentionally grow together, live a big life of adventure and possibility and create relationships that last. Well, what if I looked at how I created income and how I designed a business that gives me the highest probability of that versus just a business that provides success. And then I just kind of figure the family thing out.
Yeah. And also, like, what a leg up you are giving your kids when you do figure this out. And then you can model that for them and give them that same opportunity to truly own their time. I think most people, if you look at, statistics, most people trade time for money, right?
Yeah.
Like that is by far and away the vast majority of how most people earn a living. But when you can shift and you can use capital to create money, you can use assets to create money, you can use leverage to create money, you can use systems to create money. You're teaching a different set of lessons and skills. There's a different knowledge base that is unlocked. And I think you can give your children that leg up where they see this early on. They make different decisions than you made early on because of wisdom, financial wisdom. So like my goal is not to, pass down all this wealth so that my daughter is set for life financially. Like I think 9 times out of 10, that ruins a child.
That's not a good equation. Yeah.
Right. But what if I can teach the principles around it? What if I can teach wisdom around it? What if I can help facilitate, starting a business with her and using some of that capital instead of like just giving it, but like, hey, let's do this together. Let's bring our, we can strengthen our relationship and our bond. And what does it mean to have a loan? And, what are the terms? And, all this stuff. I think that there's so much opportunity to empower them. So part of it's like, yeah, I want for today to buy my time back so I can live a life that is just wonderful on many levels. And I can be present with my family and not be distracted, even when I'm in the same room with my mind wandering about all the stuff I have to do. But I can just be present. Let's go a generation past that. Like, how do we equip our kids? How do we make sure that they're going to have an amazing life and that they've got great, values and rules and lessons and beliefs and mindset around money and time? Because there are a lot of rich people out there that they think they own their business, but their business owns them, or they're, they're a slave to the income that they make, or to the corporate job, or to the definition or title or corporate ladder, or I spent so many years or so much money getting here, I need to stay here, or whatever the thing is, or maybe it's just being tied to safety and security. And it's hard to break away from that. But if we can empower and educate in a different way, we give our kids and their kids and their kids such a head start when we can value relationship, quality time, doing the things we love, having passion projects, feeling fulfilled, doing missional work, like good for the community, like not feeling like you have to squeeze every dollar out of all the time, right? So a lot of rich people out there, and rich people may have a lot of money. Wealthy people have a lot of time. Wealthy people buy their time back. Rich people have a lot of money. Big difference in the two.
I love that.
Huge difference.
Yeah. Love that distinction. So for the quick, will you tell us quickly, Justin, when you said, I thought it was interesting, it's not as difficult as people might think. Because I think a lot of times people are, even some of the people listening, it's like, well, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I know nothing about starting to invest. I know nothing about assets. I know nothing about passive income. How simple is it to start?
Well, the best way to say it is I knew nothing about it either. Like I started just like anyone else started. And what I did is I looked for the people that had the track record. I mean, today everyone's a life coach, so you got to be careful. Everyone apparently is an expert in everything. And so like, I just subscribe to this whole philosophy that may sound crazy, that I want to coach with and learn from people that have done the exact thing that I want to do, and they have done it themselves and have a track record. That's it. And so for me, like, I find those people, I study them, I read their books, I, learn their courses. My goal is to become educated. And the more educated I become, the more confident I am. And if someone has a playbook that worked for them, I'm very confident that if I run that playbook, I can do it, I don't know, 70% as good as they do.
Right.
And 70% as good as they do is better than wherever I am today,
Yeah.
running no playbook with no passive income.
Sure.
And I've also found that once I get committed to the process, and once I have some time invested, once I have some capital invested, it's a different level of education. Like my seriousness, the way things stick, the way I'm able to learn and grow changes. And so I just believe in a peer group that's doing things that impress and inspire you. Things like, I just look for people that are playing the game of life and business and wealth building and fitness and whatever the thing is better than me. And I want a whole bunch of them in my life. And I'm happy to pay for coaches. I have a coach. I almost always have a coach that I'm paying for something. They have some level of expertise. So I want mentors. I want coaches. I want a peer group. And I know that the more I spend time with people that are playing this game of life at a higher level than me, it's going to elevate my game, even by default, just by proximity.
Yeah.
So that to me is where I've started. And before I had the peer group, the peer group were authors that I just read their work and they had no clue that they were my mentors, but they were.
Yeah. It's amazing. My wife and I just, to kick off the idea of the book club, we decided to do a podcast episode to her, just the two of us, around just the power of books. And it's amazing how much knowledge is out there. Really, really good, life-changing, transformative knowledge in the form of books. And it's just an untapped resource for most people that they don't read, they don't consume, good content. And so if someone was wanting to start thinking about this idea of passive income and using that as a way to get back some of their time and be present and have income that's coming in and having that lifestyle, would your book be, The Lifestyle Investor, would that be a great place for someone to start, just to start kind of learning what's available and how that process works?
Yeah. My goal for the book was that I wanted to create a framework and a blueprint that can help anyone, a total novice, but a total expert, and anywhere in between. So I have built it so that not only can it be like a one-stop shop, but there's a glossary for everything. And, a lot of people, in my community and in my network tell me that, they kind of dog ear the book and highlight it and they go back and they re-reference it and they use it as a guide, because I laid out not only my criteria, which are my 10 commandments of cash flow investing for passive income, for financial freedom. It's my 10 criteria that I use as my guide on whether I should invest in something or not. And so that's really what, that subtitle of the book, of The Lifestyle Investor. It's really the 10 commandments, or my 10 criteria for investing. And then I give 12 actual examples of investments that I did, laid out to a T, the exact structure, the negotiation on it, my mindset on it, but even the term, so people can copy it. And that's my goal. I want people to copy, because at heart, I'm just a big copycat. I just found the people that were best in class and I just copied them.
I love it. Where's the best place for someone to go to buy your book?
So, you can get it on Amazon. If you go to lifestyleinvestor.com, you can get a copy there. If you pay the shipping, it's free there. Lifestyleinvestor.com basically has everything.
Awesome.
I've got, free stuff, a blog, my podcast by the same name, online course, a masterclass on passive income and on specifically mobile home park investing, my mastermind. So everything is there. And one of the things that I'd love to offer your community is anyone that wants to figure out, like, what's the next step? How, here's my life. And for me, what would be a good next step? We do free strategy calls for,
That'd be amazing.
certain groups, certain networks. And I'd love to open that up to your community. If anyone wants a live call to figure out what is next, they can go to lifestyleinvestor.com/strategy.
That's amazing. And look, when people offer things like this, when people like Justin offer things, like, you take them up on it. I'm amazed at how many people are offered the ability to talk to an expert or talk to someone on a team, and like, don't do it out of fear of, what the commitment would be, or fear of being embarrassed, right? It's like, no, that's like, you get access to mentors, you get access to people that are further down the path than you, and you take advantage of that. So I would really encourage you to do that. Go to lifestyleinvestor.com. Justin, will you share with us, I'm not going to ask you the most important or your favorite one, but will you just share with us, like, one of the 10 commandments, like that you
Yeah.
think is useful or that for our audience?
Yeah, the first one's pretty obvious because commandment one is lifestyle first. So I'm not going to elaborate on that, but kind of the mission here is like we're not trying to buy another job. We're trying to invest in something that buys our time back, right? Maybe you spend time analyzing it, but it's like a one segment of time that is invested, and then it just is a dividend that keeps paying. So that's the goal there. One of the ones that I think a lot of people don't think about, and I'd love to talk about commandment number 4. Commandment number 2 is, to de-risk the deal. How do you de-risk it? How do you ensure you just don't lose money or don't lose all your money if you make a poor decision? Commandment number 3 is finding invisible deals. And, I elaborate in these, a ton in the book and on my podcast. But commandment number 4 is one that I think is foreign to a lot of people. And one of my strategies is I like to get my principal back immediately or as fast as I can because I recycle those dollars. So if I do a deal and I invest, let's say $100,000 into an investment for easy math, and maybe I'm getting a 10% preferred return. And so, I'm making $10,000 a year on that, and it's broken up. Maybe it's monthly or quarterly payments. Well, at a certain point, when they refinance this, I'm going to get that money back. Or when they sell that, I'm going to get the money back. And I found a bunch of deals where I've got my money back in a year and a half, in one case, 6 months.
Wow.
And then I take that same money and I rolled into another deal, but I still have the equity over here because a lot of time they haven't sold, they just refinanced.
Got it.
I still have equity. So I take the
Fascinating.
100,000 and now I invest in, let's say, an operating company. I've bought several of these and I'll have an operator come run it. So again, lifestyle first. I'm not running it. I'm the owner, and there's an operator that's being paid to run that business. And so, we invested in this dog training company during COVID because I saw everyone was buying dogs. And I was like, there's a business here. And
Amazing.
so this dog training company took off, and Patrick Mahomes trained his dog in our studio, which was really cool. And so, but that business, I put $100,000 down. Within 4 months, I had $100,000 back, like just from the cash flow of that business. And then we sold it at a year and a day. So we hit long-term capital gains. And then we had a little piece of the tail that continued on for cash flow on that deal. That was an extra part of the negotiation. And so I got all my money out of that deal in 4 months. I reinvested it. And then I had another, lump sum come at that year and a day. I was able to reinvest that. And then I still had equity upside. So we put a little more in, a note, or, I could go on and on. But basically all these deals are with the same dollars, right? So in 5 years, I have 5 different deals that I have equity in, but all my money's out. So there's no skin in the game. Like it's all upside. So if these companies crumble, it doesn't matter. All my money's out, but the odds of them all crumbling are not good. So now I've got exponential growth on that same single investment. So that's kind of like the way I look at the velocity of money. And I think that is often unfamiliar to most people. Most people invest for the long haul. They invest in a way that, in many cases, they don't even know if they're going to make it or not. If they, it's a high risk investment. We don't know if this company is going to make it in 20 years. It may or may not, have paid out. It may be dead. We don't know. Like, I'd rather get my money back fast, know that it worked, know that I've got upside, and move it to the next one.
Yeah, it's incredible. Super inspiring, man. I appreciate you coming on. And I really do hope that those of you listening, go to lifestyleinvestor.com, buy the book, take Justin and his team up on a free strategy session. So last question, something I love to ask guests when they come on is, what do you want to be known for as a family more than anything?
I want us to be known as a family that loves others well, that we support and love other people well, that we value all people at the highest level, and that we do it together, that this is a value that we all share, from the standpoint of like donating time, donating resources, donating, specifically money, that other people matter, and that we have a responsibility, no matter how much money we make, we have a responsibility of being charitable and giving back.
Love that. I love that. What we want to be known for as a family more than anything is loving people well and being charitable and giving back. That's awesome. Well, Justin, you're inspiring, man. And I love what you've created with your family. I love that you guys are living by design, intentionally growing together, creating relationships that are going to last. So thank you for coming on again to the Family Brand Podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And just a side note, all the proceeds from the Lifestyle Investor book all go towards fighting human trafficking. So this book now, believe it or not, when I wrote it, I didn't think, more than a handful of people would buy it. And it's now a top 1% of all books sold. But because of that, we've been able to give hundreds of thousands of dollars to fighting human trafficking in over 30 countries around the world. We've been able to partner up with the Tim Tebow Foundation and support them, and Love Justice International, and just great things are happening. And a percentage of all income from the Lifestyle Investor brand, all products go towards these efforts as well. So I just want everyone to know that anything that you ever get involved in or purchase, that my goal is anything I ever produce for the rest of my life, that a percentage or maybe 100% is going to bettering other people and buying human freedom back, right? Most of us are blessed that we've got freedom, but there are people in the world that don't even have that. Totally. So as we're seeking for financial freedom, let's help those that don't even have their rights in front of them. Let's help them buy that time back.
It's amazing. Well, thank you for the work you're doing, man. We appreciate you, and hope to support the Lifestyle Investor Network as much as we can.
Love it. Well, thanks, Chris. Great to be on.
All right. See you.